Hello, I'm Rebecca Weber. You're listening to AMAC's podcast, Better for America. Today's episode is brought to you by the AMAC app. The AMAC app is your go-to landing spot for up-to-date real news, polls, and interactive games, in addition to all of the great money-saving benefits that AMAC has to offer. Joining us now is a dear friend of AMAC's, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Gorka was born in Great Britain to parents who escaped communism during the Hungarian Revolution. He became a proud American citizen in 2012. He earned his doctorate in political science, was a fellow at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. After coming to America, he served as a Defense Department instructor teaching at the National Defense University in Fort McNair. Dr. Gorka writes for The Hill, and he has written 2 books. His first, Defeating Jihad. It was a national bestseller, and his latest is called Why We Fight, Defeating America's Enemies with No Apologies. Now, before launching his Salem radio network show, America First, with Sebastian Gorka, he was an advisor to candidate Donald J. Trump. He served on the staff of the White House in 2017 as Deputy Assistant to the President for Strategy. In 2020, President Donald Trump named him to the National Security Education Board. He is also the host of Newsmax TV's The Gorka Reality Check. Sebastian Gorka, welcome to AMAC's Better for America. I'm thrilled you're with me.
Well, I'm thrilled to be with you, Rebecca, and with AMAC. I've started writing for you regularly. I'm actually working on, I think, my 4th or 5th piece today. And before we get started, I want to just salute you, your late father, and everybody at AMAC who understands, sadly, that if it's important, then it's political. So whether it's the border, whether it's benefits for seniors, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, whether it's just what happens to our children and grandchildren in our schools, you can't be just a sideline observer anymore. And I commend your candor and your courage in these difficult times.
Well, it's an honor to hear you say that. Thank you. And our members are loving your pieces. We've got some great articles up on our website. I want to jump right in, Dr. Gorka. You have called China our number one threat. And it's certainly easy to see why. The Chinese Communist Party has doubled its military spending within the last decade, and it continues to steal American intellectual property. Recently, it was announced that China plans to build a military base in Cuba. What actions, in your opinion, sir, should U.S. leaders take now to protect Americans from China's aggression?
Well, sadly, I can't give you advice for what U.S. leaders should do now because they won't do it. We have a chairman of the Joint Chiefs, an individual who I consider should be arrested for treason and in the brig right now, Mark Milley, who has admitted on numerous occasions that when the commander-in-chief was my former boss, President Trump, he told his counterpart in communist China, General Lee, that don't worry, General Lee, if President Trump is planning anything military, I'll give you a heads up. So we actually have true collaborators with our greatest enemy inside the wire right now. So you look at the disastrous national security decisions of late, whether it's the surrender of Afghanistan, the 13 U.S. warfighters who were killed by ISIS during the withdrawal. You look at what's happened in Ukraine during the Biden administration. The right things will not happen now. What should happen? Well, I can tell you what should happen when President Trump comes back into the White House, God willing, is we revert to his policies. When I joined the administration, I'd spent almost 20 years in the counterterrorism field. I expected that to be my mandate as deputy to the president for strategy. But once I came in, and I credit Steve Bannon for this, once I got my clearances, started reading the top secret presidential briefings, I realized that we were going to deal with ISIS, which we did. We crushed them. We're going to deal with North Korea, which we did. We had the amazing peace summit in Singapore. We'll deal with Russia. There were no wars for 4 years whilst President Trump was commander-in-chief. And we'll deal with, Iran. I'm so proud. I told the president, along with Steve, he had to cancel the Iran deal, Obama's disastrous JCPOA, and he did. However, I did realize, once I read those classified briefings for the president, that there is one strategic level threat to America, and it is China. And please, AMAC members, listeners, don't take my word for it. To quote Simon Wiesenthal, the Nazi hunter of yore. He said, when a group of people repeatedly say they wish to destroy you, sooner or later you should take them seriously. Read the documents coming out of Beijing. Read the documents coming out of the PLA, the People's Liberation Army. They published a book in 1999 that you can read, translated into English now, called Unrestricted Warfare. It is the plan to take down far more powerful nations like America. They have a global initiative called One Belt, One Road, under which every nation will become either a satrapy, either a tributary nation to Communist China, or will become an enemy to be defeated. And they have been explicit under Xi Jinping that by the 100th anniversary of the communist takeover of China, which will be 2049, there can be only one hegemonic power in the world, and that nation will be China. We've seen what happened recently with Chinese warships becoming perilously close to U.S. warships in the Straits of Taiwan. We've seen Chinese fighters recklessly buzz our U.S. military aircraft. China is on the rise. It can be dealt with, but only if you have somebody like President Trump in the White House who understands the nature of the threat, which he does. Because remarkably, you can go back 20, 30 years and see interviews with Mr. Trump on Oprah and elsewhere, where he talked about the threat of the rise of China. So he's been on message for decades. We need leadership.
That's it. It's all about strong leadership. Now, the Chinese have made it clear that they want to dominate artificial intelligence, but I think there's one problem because right now the United States is still leading the world in AI development. What should companies, American companies, do to protect their technology, and what can the U.S. government do to leverage technology to strengthen our national defense?
Well, this is one of the positive aspects of all of this. China is good at stealing our technology, stealing our IP, our intellectual property, and then manufacturing it for their own nefarious purposes. They're not very good at innovation. That's why they have to steal our secrets. However, it is incredible what massive American companies have been doing, whether it's Google, whether it's Apple. When they see China as this massive market, oh my gosh, we've got over 1 billion potential customers there, and they go into joint ventures or they create companies in China, it is a requirement in communist Chinese law right now. If a foreign company sets up a base, like they have, like Google and Apple have set up in artificial intelligence research facilities in China, when they do that, they have to sign a commitment that any IP, any technology they create must be shared with the government. So this is literally surrendering to our greatest enemy. So we have to stop that. Either they come to their senses themselves and they realize this may make sense in the next quarter for our shareholder meeting, but a year from now, 5 years from now, all that IP will be stolen. And China will not only undermine that company, but will undermine our national interest. If they don't come to that conclusion themselves, then we need a President Trump's trade war again. We've got to have tariffs. We've got to shut down these ventures. We've got to penalize American companies that help our enemy simply because they want to, make a little bit of a greater profit in the next 18 months. That way lies suicide.
That's right. I do want to shift gears to a different area of foreign affairs. You've written for AMAC Newsline about the thousands of mercenaries heading to Moscow, and you've commented that there's more to the military uprising than meets the eye. What's really going on in Russia?
Well, look, to quote Churchill, it's an enigma wrapped in a mystery. Knowing what's going on in Russia off the bat is, if anybody tells you they know, they're lying. Likewise, I like Viscount Slim's admonition about war, who said every initial report from the battlefield is wrong. So, hold your horses. The idea that 25,000 guys, which is the maximal capacity of the Wagner Group, are suddenly going to take on more than 3 million federal forces in Russia, plus the National Guard, it smacks of something suspicious. Likewise, we have this peculiar situation that after 72 hours of seeming massive success, one military command captured forces from the mercenaries, the Wagner Group, making it into the Moscow Oblast or the Moscow region. Suddenly, they stop. and hightail it out of there. And where do they go? This is this is when you go, okay, yeah, I see. They end up in Belarus. Belarus is even more of a dictatorship than the Russian Federation under Putin. Lukashenko is an unreconstituted communist who is a complete lackey, a lapdog for Vladimir Putin. So why would Vladimir Putin's most loyal lackey be giving aid and succor to Prigozhin and the Wagner mercenaries who tried to remove Putin? It doesn't make any sense. And then the statement that I linked, if you again, I pack my articles for you and for the AMAC Newsline with links to primary sources, and then you see that the Kremlin has made a statement: none of the Wagner mercenaries will be charged with a crime. Well, then how is it a coup? I think there's more to the story. I don't have verified secondary evidence, but if you wanted to identify the people who are least loyal to you, what would be a very useful way? You tell somebody like Wagner Group, like Prigozhin, hey, would you engineer a fake coup? And then I can see everyone back here in Washington, in Moscow, who volunteers and joins you guys, and then I can decapitate the lot of them. So let's just say it's very, very suspicious, and the jury is still out on exactly what happened. Isn't it amazing? It was what, less than 3 weeks ago?
Meanwhile, our media and intelligence agencies are turning all of their attention on the Trump smear campaign. What is going on with the Hunter Biden investigation? Do you believe the accusations of bribery are grounds for impeachment?
This really saddens me because before I joined the Trump administration, my wife and our company had the only external counterterrorism training contract with the FBI for doctrine on ISIS and Al Qaeda, and I was traveling 25,000 miles a month from FBI field office to FBI, field office, giving lectures and educating our agents. I educated thousands of agents and intelligence analysts, and today I see the DOJ and the FBI as fundamentally corrupted. These are institutions that at their core have become political weapons. So if you're a Republican who worked for President Trump, like Steve Bannon or Peter Navarro, you can be arrested at Reagan Airport and put in leg irons because you're in contempt of Nancy Pelosi's already illegal January 6th committee. But if you're the president's son, who we know has been taking money from communist China, from Russia, from Ukraine, from Kazakhstan, in breach of all Foreign Agent Registration Act requirements, who has boasted, again, please don't take my word for it, go and listen to the audio recordings on the Hunter Biden laptop, which we know are his. Why? Because his lawyers, his attorneys, demanded the hard drives back. You can't demand back that which is not yours. And if you listen to this strange person who has a proclivity for hard drugs and for prostitutes, recorded so much of his own telephonic communications. There's a message there. I think Rahim Kassam first broke the story at National Pulse, and I'll edit it for your audience because it uses foul language. Where Hunter Biden's talking to a business partner, and he boasts, I am in business with the effing chief spy of China.
We've got to pay more attention to these whistleblowers, right? They're coming out, and they've got a fear for their lives. There's something very, very fundamentally wrong here in America, and unless we get stronger leadership, Dr. Gorka, you're right. This isn't going away anytime soon because they're going to continue to play their games. I'm thrilled that the American people are really waking up. And isn't it something that it's very easy for Trump to get 50,000 Americans to show up at an event? That speaks volumes, but mainstream media wants to label him and smear him all day long. So our prayer here at AMAC is that we continue to get out the truth and that people search for truth. Because that's very important today, and the left is everything but for truth. A new Politico poll found that most Americans think that Trump's classified documents trial should happen before the 2024 primaries. What's in store for Trump, and what does this mean for the Republican field?
Well, look, I said it on a friend's radio show. yesterday, and it's hard for me to say this because I am, of course, the child of those who escaped communist dictatorship. My father was actually imprisoned with a life sentence at the age of 20 in communist Hungary. And the only reason I'm alive today is because he was liberated 6 years later by the revolutionaries in 1956. So it pains me to say this because my father was actually tortured and imprisoned by secret police officers in a dictatorship. But I have to admit that we are living in a police state today. And it's not just about President Trump. We know everything from Alvin Bragg in Manhattan to the latest filings by Jack Smith to the raid on his home in Mar-a-Lago. This is all political. But it's not just President Trump. If you're a pro-life pastor outside Philadelphia who pushes an insane pro-abortionist away from his 12-year-old son because he's screaming at his 12-year-old son, you have that assault charge dropped in a federal court, but 3 months later, the FBI with 20 agents and loaded M4 rifles in full bulletproof gear raid your home and arrest you in front of your 7 children. That's Mark Houck. So it doesn't matter who you are. This is the use of the police powers of the most powerful nation in the world as a political weapon. Let's just, wrap it in a bow, to use a British phrase. Who is President Trump? He's not just the former president who was in the White House, less than 2 years ago. He's the leader of the opposition. But right now, it doesn't matter which poll you look at, he is between 20 and 40 points ahead of his nearest rival, the governor of Florida. So he is the de facto leader of the opposition. Most likely he will be the Republican candidate for the presidency. And his home is being raided by armed agents of the FBI on some spurious documents charged, despite the fact that every president, including Jimmy Carter and Obama and George Bush, every single president maintains the highest level of security clearance till the day they die. This tells you this is police state tactics, and we have to stop it. We must stop it before it is too late, Rebecca.
Yeah, our listeners get it. They realize, that we could have a presidential candidate campaigning from jail. I mean, this is absolutely insane. And if it hasn't reached you personally, you're going to know someone soon whose life has been impacted by this police state. It will only continue to get worse. We see what's happening even in schools, how parents are being labeled domestic terrorists. This continues to get worse. This is why we do this show, Dr. Gorka, to bring people on like you who can share your insight. And your life story truly is an example of it's an American story with parents who had lived as children under fascism, escaped communist Hungary, and you were raised to love freedom. How did you and your family learn how to fight that totalitarian ideology and instead really embrace democracy and liberty?
Well, look, I've actually written 3 books. The latest is The War for America's Soul, and each book opens with a chapter about my parents and what my father suffered under, and why he sacrificed his life in terms of life imprisonment because he wanted democracy to flourish in the land of his birth after World War II. How do I do what I do? Look, I love this country. I chose this country. Sadly, most Americans, I believe, have no idea how utterly blessed they are to be born in this nation. I've traveled the world. I've been to Asia, Africa. I've been to Afghanistan after 9/11. I've seen how other people live and how there's only one nation that has the concept of unalienable human rights, civil rights, encoded in its founding document, and encoded in such a way that our founding fathers, God bless them, understood that those rights aren't given to us or recognized by a transitory government, but they are a function of us being made in the image of our Creator. It is so vital to understand that the word Creator with a capital C is in our founding document. That makes America unique. Why do I do what I do after what my family has been through, not just my parents, but, when I was in the White House, they came after my wife. They attacked my children. My 18-year-old high school age son was called a traitor in the headline of an article written by the, mainstream lying legacy media. I'll tell you how I do this. It's very simple, Rebecca. You can identify, sometimes you can identify to within a minute or a second when your life changes forever by dint of what you've experienced and a choice you made or what has been shown to you. I was 8 or 9 years old, and we were vacationing at the seaside. And my father was a bear of a man. He was on the national crew team before he was arrested. He was incredibly fit, and he loved to swim. And there I am sitting on the sand, playing with my toys, my G.I. Joes, and making a sandcastle or what have you. And this giant man comes out of the ocean, and he comes up to me. And I suddenly saw something on his wrists that I hadn't noticed before. And there's these white lines. And he was far too young to be wrinkled on his wrists. So like an idiot child, I just said, "Hey, Dad, what's that?" And without skipping a beat, with no emotion, he just looks down at me and he says, "Son, that's where the secret police bound my wrists together behind my back with wire so they could hang me from the roof of the torture chamber." That's when my life changed. That's when I realized something very simple, Rebecca. Evil is real. Evil lurks in the heart of men. It's not just something in fairy tales about wizards and witches and dragons. It is part of our fallen nature. And to quote the famous philosopher Edmund Burke, all that is required for evil to win is for good men or women to do nothing. I'm not prepared to do nothing. My good friend, Matt Schlapp, recently asked the Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, who I consider a great American and a friend, Mark Robinson, who as a black man has been lambasted, who has suffered in editorial cartoons as a black man being associated with white hood-wearing members of the KKK, simply because he believes in the Constitution. And Matt was visiting the Lieutenant Governor's office with a delegation, and he asked Mark, "Why do you do what you do? I mean, you were anonymous, you were living your life, you're an Army veteran. One day you speak up at a town hall meeting about this anti-Second Amendment decision that was about to be taken by the council. The video went viral. If you haven't seen it, it is an unrehearsed speech of excellence about why we have the Second Amendment. And that one clip propelled him to the lieutenant governorship. And Mark has been attacked relentlessly as a black American since then by the real racists, who are, of course, the Democrats, the party that created the KKK, the party that was for segregation, the party that is institutionally racist because every Jim Crow law was brought by a Democrat. Why does he put up with that? And he looked at Matt and the delegation. He said the following. He said, "I'm not prepared to lie on my deathbed and stare at the ceiling and come to the conclusion I could have done more."
Well, it's
That's
exactly,
why.
yeah, and it's that beautiful attitude that really does help inspire, encourage others, gives people the courage to get out and do something. And we so appreciate you and what you've done. Your stories are so important. Dr. Gorka, it is so wonderful to be with you, and I thank you for all that you do for AMAC. I'd love to have you back with us again, and for everyone listening, go ahead and check out Dr. Sebastian Gorka's great articles on AMAC Newsline. I know you'll be doing a lot more for us in the coming weeks and months. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's my distinct pleasure, and thank you so much for everything you and your family have built at AMAC. God bless you.
Thank you. And for everyone listening, thank you for joining. Remember to join or renew your membership at amac.us. Don't forget to check out all of the amazing money-saving benefits that we have to offer. And we hope that you're loving our great magazine. The next issue is due to arrive in your mailboxes in the coming weeks. From all of us at AMAC, have a wonderful day.